Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to Eye on the Community. And I am your host, Sean Anthony. Up next, joining us again on the platform is the Columbus City Council President, Mr. Shannon Hardin. Shannon, how are you, man? Welcome back to Eye on the Community.
Sean, brother, thank you so much for having me back on. It's always good to come and spend a few minutes with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's jump right in it. Over the past appearances on the platform, you've been talking about reimagining safety. Lately, we've been seeing a lot of violence within the capital city, especially within the Black community amongst teens. Um, Talk about some of the things what City Council has been doing to get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is a heavy topic, man. And what I've been saying, Sean, is that 2020 was the year of pain, tough conversations, hurt. We had COVID that came to our community. We had the conversations around racial reckoning and what we've had to do to change policing in America. Those are tough conversations. The COVID side, once in 100 years, the conversation around race is a 400-year issue that this country has not gotten right. And so we churned all that up. And then, we move into 2021. And I firmly believe that it's time for us now to start the reconciliation process so that we can come back together to figure out where do we go from here now? How do we make our community safer? And reconciliation has two different avenues. One, a racial reconciliation, because folks need to still understand what race means in America and the role that it plays. But also, we need to have a different conversation about how can we continue to do the reform that will allow us to rebuild the trust between the Black community and law enforcement. Because the truth is, my top priority is safety. It is the number one thing that any leader, just like a parent, is to keep your child, your community, your people safe. That is, as a leader, is my top priority. And with the spike in violence, we have to stay focused on that. And so, just last week, we rolled out a third reimagining safety package. It focused on keeping neighborhoods safe, acknowledging and leaning even deeper into reform. We got to continue to reform, and then building the trust between community and law enforcement. I think that those three elements are critical to us turning the page and moving our community forward.
That sounds awesome. But let's go a little step further. Talk to me about that initiative and that reimagining safety. What exactly does that mean in Columbus?
Certainly. Well, it includes 10 different legislative pieces from different council members' offices. Everything from firearm safety to holding folks involved in human trafficking accountable, to improving diversity amongst the division, to starting the long, slow process of rebuilding trust. I rolled out $100,000 seed grants to community groups that will start those reconciliation conversations in neighborhoods. So it is one, acknowledging that through these pieces of legislation, that there is still work to be done in terms of reform. We have not transformed policing yet, but that we also need to uplift and acknowledge some of our good officers, even some of our new officers, new recruits that we have coming, and start working on the hard, long road back to rebuilding trust. And I know that it's not something, trust is not something that's given. It's something that is earned. And right. So we have to go through that long process. I don't think it'll be quick. I don't think it'll be easy. But for the sake of all of us, I think it's necessary.
You mentioned the police, which I want to get to in a minute, because we do have a new chief. But talk about, some of these reforms that you mentioned, alternative crisis responses, the new training programs and minority recruitment. Can you elaborate on some of those initiatives, Sean?
Certainly. So I've said from the beginning of the conversations around transforming policing that I think one of the biggest nuts to crack is around alternative crisis response, to make sure that people get the appropriate response to the appropriate crisis that is at hand. So if my 86-year-old neighbor who has dementia is in a fight or has a dispute with her relative or her caregiver, I don't know if that necessitates an armed police officer to come and intervene. I would also posit that I don't know if that makes us that much safer, because now you've taken a armed police officer off the street to go deal with violent crime, to go deal with an issue that he is not or she is not best equipped to deal with. And so we are exploring now. We have put money in the budget. The mayor, the administration is supportive of this. The fire department is all in on how do we build a comprehensive alternative crisis response system. So in our minds, we should think of it as you call 911 for a fire. You call 911. You can do three different things. If you have a fire or emergency, it goes to the fire department. If you have a violent crime issue, it goes to the police. If you have and this is where we need to work on in this alternative crisis response: mental health, youth issues that are not violent, low level where an armed person necessarily was not the only person that comes out. We can build this out as an entire department, an entire entity that will serve our community. I think that this is the future of safety. I think that it allows our police officers to focus again on the very specific roots of violence or specific violence that we see in our community, and it brings in more trained, better trained folks, professionals to deal with the other issues that plague our community.
I like those ideas, Shannon. Those definitely sound like it would be something very productive for our city. We have a new police chief, Miss Elaine Bryant. Have you had conversations with the new chief about some of these reforms? And also, what was the response? Is she receptive, or
Oh man. So this is what I say. Chief Bryant looks like a different police chief because she is a different police chief. We have never had a Black woman police chief. We've never had a police chief that was not a part of our division for their entire career. So her bringing this fresh experience and a fresh take on look at what we are doing in terms of safety in Columbus is critical. She believes in reform. She is reform minded. She also wants to buck up the morale of her department that she's running, and I 100% get that, as we want to make sure that folks know that they are supported in the work that they're doing. But she is really coming in with a mantle to rebuild trust in this community. She understands. She from Detroit, where she's coming from, watched our protest. She watched how poorly it was done here in Columbus. They did not have these issues in Detroit like we did in Columbus during the protest. And it was because they have a strong foundation in community policing and community engagement that was deeper than what we have done here. And so those are not just future indictments on the police department. I think those are opportunities. And so what I have said and what I really ask the community to do is let's circle her. Let's support her. Let's give her the space to learn the department, learn the city, and then do the job. I have strong faith in her. We will hold her and the department accountable. But first, we got to let her get on her feet. And I said I will play defense and offense for Chief Bryant because I think she's the right person for this time to bring real change and better relations with the community to our department.
That's good to know. And just real quick, Shannon, do you know what the response has been from the police department with the new chief?
I think that I've talked to rank and file members of our police department. I think they're really excited about having someone new. I think that what they want to know is they want clarity. They want clarity in their mission. They want clarity in their objectives. They want clarity in outcomes, and they want support. And I think that we can give that. I think that policing is hard because our expectations are raised. We're raising our expectations for what it means to enforce safety, how you do it, when you do it, why you do it, and that's hard to do on the fly. And so we still have to have conversation around training. We have to have conversation around directives, and we just ask them to come along on the journey with us. I understand how difficult that can be, especially in the midst of how heated our rhetoric was last year. But I do think that it is now time for us to find ways to get around the table to figure this out. This safety issue, this violence that we're seeing in our community is real. It is real, and I will do anything. I will go anywhere. I will sit across the table with anybody to figure out how we stop these killings. My last event on Friday was Mackenzie's funeral. and a 17-year-old girl who was on the way to Wilberforce. We have some control too. Like we got to hold the police department accountable for transforming themselves, but we also have to stand up against some of this violence. Also, we got to speak up when we know something. We will be protected if you know something, because there's no street code out there, man, that says that you stay quiet when your sister, your friend, your cousin is shot down. And it is not acceptable for you to even do the retaliation, man, because it just begets it keeps on happening. Don't let that, it's not your war. Let somebody else, let the appropriate forces, the police department, handle this. We can't keep this tit for tat going on, or we will not get back to a new normal. This violence has to stop.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. Um, and that Mackenzie's death was
It's
impact.
tough.
Yeah, because I know her mother, and I could not imagine what she's going through. Talk about the Civilian Police Review Board. I know you were talking about, you mentioned accountability. When will their work officially begin, and what duties do they have?
Yeah, so we vote, I think, this evening on the codifying their actual initial procedures for the Civilian Review Board. Just to remind folks, and as we came out of the protests, one of the things that we moved forward on was accountability. Columbus was the largest city in the country that did not have independent oversight of their police department with civilians. And so we took it to the voters, and voters supported it. 74% voted for this. Earlier this year, the mayor and council appointed an 11-member board commission to be seated, and now we're filling in those gray areas around how and when you do re-ups, like how the next group will be appointed, who will be, how those appointments will work, how they will establish themselves, how they will set up their own internal rules. And so at the hearing, I heard Chair Janet Jackson, who chairs the commission, say that she intends to call the first meeting by the end of July, and then they will have a very active schedule. I think they are mandated to meet 4 times a year. She said this first year, as they get set up, they will be meeting much more as they look to hire the Inspector General and set that Office of Inspector General up.
Okay, awesome. Let's switch gears real quick. Council recently passed legislation to establish and implement a policy for the city of Columbus's new minority and women-owned business and small local business enterprise programs. Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So one of the things that I'm most proud of, or one of the things that I've done since being council president, is I kept the Small Minority Business Committee as chair. It is very rare that a council president chairs a committee. As council president, I chair the whole council, but I wanted to raise the profile of this committee and the work that it had before it, which was implementing the disparity study. So in 2015, when the mayor came in, we said that we would do this disparity study, went out, and the disparity study does what it says. It studies to see if there are disparities between the available work that a city puts out and the available workers or companies that can do the work. And what our disparity study showed is that there are huge disparities between available contractors and folks have the ability, African Americans that have the ability to do work, versus the money and dollar spend that is being put out on the streets from the city of Columbus. And we have to have that legal justification, legal data, the data behind it, so that we can then set up programs and procedures that will help us mitigate those disparity studies. So we finally got those things just about ready to bring to the public. We had 2 public hearings last week to talk about the different components of the disparity study, making sure that we close those gaps. I would tell folks to watch this space. Hopefully we will pass. I know we will pass both pieces by our last meeting in July, on the July 26th, I believe. But watch that space. It's in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. It's critical to engaging and making sure that our dollar spend, our $1.56 billion that the city of Columbus spends each year, is spent equitably between all the folks who can do the work.
Wow, that's admirable, Shannon. I didn't know that you were on that board, man. That's pretty awesome. Look, just briefly, why is it so important for the economic success of Columbus?
Well, because we can't move forward as a community if it's inequitable growth. And so we have to make sure that we do whatever we have to do to level the playing field. We have folks who have done well working for the city, and we appreciate them. But if there is not a pipeline for minority and women, so there also shows strong disparities between women-owned businesses, strong disparities sometimes with Latina, Hispanic and Latino business owners. And so the disparities are all the way down the line. And what is the important part about equity, and especially around business and contracting, is that what we know for sure is that a woman-owned business, they usually hire more women. A minority-owned business usually hires more minorities. So if you really want to improve the pipeline, improve the whole ecosystem, it really does matter who has those contracts. And so we're just trying to make sure that our growth that we're seeing, the dollar spend that we are expending, is done so in an equitable way.
That's good to know. You know, since I've relocated back to Columbus a few years ago, I've noticed that there's been a big, tremendous growth of local owned businesses and entrepreneurs in the city. And that's inspiring, to say the least. But before we wrap up, I know we wanted to touch on vaccines. You know, there's been a big push. I know that I talked to Liz Brown a couple of weeks ago with the what is it, the Vaccine Green campaign, or
Yeah.
offering some initiatives for residents to get vaccinated. Just talk briefly why it's so important.
You know what, man, we are at the personal responsibility phase of this vaccine. We have, you know, we are more than a year and a half out from when we all had to shut down, go home, and we did not have a tool to make it better. We have a tool now. The vaccines work. The folks that are still getting sick, like very sick and going to the hospital, and the folks that are still dying from COVID are those who are unvaccinated. And so we have a choice to make, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, specifically in our community. So I just encourage folks to educate themselves, talk to their family members who have been vaccinated, talk to your healthcare provider. You used to trust them. So I don't know when everybody became doctors and not trusting their doctor now, but like talk to your healthcare provider and make the decision for yourself. There is a very dangerous variant that is spreading, this Delta variant. We're seeing the numbers spike in areas where there are high unvaccinated populations. We put out the Vaccine Green program to make sure it wasn't to incentivize people to get the vaccine. There were still real barriers to getting the vaccine. I think I told you about it. When I got my vaccine, I was sick as a dog for 24 hours. Well, I'm able to take the day off if I get sick. But if somebody working at a fast food restaurant or a grocery store gets sick for 24 hours and needs that $100,
right?
That's what the Vaccine Green was about, to say, nah, you know what? Don't sacrifice your health for some money right now. Take the vaccine. If you don't feel well, take the day off. You need the day off to get well and keep you safe and me safe. It wasn't an incentive program. It wasn't a Vax a Million type thing. It was do what you have to do to keep money in your pockets, but also keep yourself healthy.
Excellent. Shannon Hardin, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, the president of Columbus City Council. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this information on the community, man.
Thank you, my friend. Anytime.
Talk to you soon.
See you, man.